Have you ever heard of a criminal who was defeated not by the police, but by the very force of nature? This unbelievable story took place in California and reveals how, in moments of despair, even the most dangerous can become victims of something totally unpredictable. Imagine the scene. A man who decided to use a forest as a hiding place to hold a victim hostage, believing that there he would be safe, away from the reach of the authorities. But what seems like an ordinary escape strategy soon turns into an episode of savage justice, where nature itself kicks in a way no one could have predicted. Stay with me until the end, because what you will discover now may surprise you. This is not just a crime story, but an episode that shows how the force of nature can intervene decisively in extreme situations. The forest, which is often seen as a quiet and peaceful refuge, became the scene of an unexpected battle. The criminal who thought of using isolation to his advantage ended up facing a threat much more powerful than any weapon or police force. A swarm of Californian marimbondos who, in a matter of seconds, attacked in an overwhelming way. Have you ever been in a situation where nature surprised you in a radical way? Maybe not, but this story will certainly mess with your perception of what we can expect from the natural environment around us. The forest, which was supposed to be a place of peace, turned into a deadly trap for the criminal. What about the victim? He took advantage of the chaos to make a desperate escape, seeking help on the road as the intruder battled a fury of insects that seemed to have no end. What happened, Nay? Have you ever been in a situation where nature surprised you in a radical way? Maybe not, but this story will certainly mess with your perception of what we can expect from the natural environment around us. The forest, which was supposed to be a place of peace, turned into a deadly trap for the criminal. What about the victim? He took advantage of the chaos to make a desperate escape, seeking help on the road as the intruder battled a fury of insects that seemed to have no end. What happened next? How did the force of nature dominate the scene and turn a crime episode into a lesson in savage justice? Stay with me, because the story is just beginning and what comes next will surely hold you even more. If this topic makes sense to you, leave here in the comments what touched you the most, or what was your reaction to hearing this amazing story. Your opinion is very important and helps to create an exchange of experiences that further enrich. If this topic makes sense to you, leave here in the comments what touched you the most, or what was your reaction to hearing this amazing story. Your opinion is very important and helps to create an exchange of experiences that further enriches our community. Also, if you liked the video, don't forget to leave your like, as this shows the algorithm that this content is relevant and encourages the production of more intriguing stories like this. Each like is a way to support this channel to continue bringing real and impactful stories, in addition to helping to reach more people who are also interested in this type of content. If you want to closely follow these amazing stories that reveal the power of nature and the mysteries of the world around us, subscribe to the channel and activate the Tinker Bell, so you don't miss out on anything new. If you want to closely follow these amazing stories that reveal the power of nature and the mysteries of the world around us, subscribe to the channel and activate the Tinker Bell, so you don't miss out on anything new and always stay on top of everything that happens, because here every story has something to teach us about the strength, life, and even justice that comes from where we least expect it. Your participation is what makes this channel grow and reach more people, spreading this message that sometimes nature reacts in a way that no one could imagine, showing that life has its own balance mechanisms. So, stay with me, because there is still much more to discover in this universe full of surprises and lessons that only true history can teach us. It was late afternoon in the Californian forest when sunlight began to filter through the treetops, creating a mosaic of shadows that danced softly on the grow. It was late afternoon in the Californian forest when sunlight began to filter through the treetops, creating a mosaic of shadows that danced softly on the ground, covered with dry leaves and mosses. The mood there was quiet, almost silent, interrupted only by the occasional sound of a bird or a slowly falling leaf swaying in the wind. To those who passed by, it seemed like an ordinary setting, a forest of serene and untouched beauty, a haven of peace away from the movement of cities and everyday hustle and bustle. However, behind this appearance of calm, a situation of invisible tension was quietly unfolding. Hidden among the trees, a man walked with quick and nervous steps, trying to maintain a firm posture, although his countenance revealed the fear and anxiety he carried. He carried a victim a person who for some reason tried to resist as little as possible, aware that any wrong move could further aggravate the situation. The kidnapper believed that there, in that isolated environment, he would be safe. Aft hidden among the trees, a man walked with quick and nervous steps, trying to maintain a firm posture, although his countenance revealed the fear and anxiety he carried. He carried a victim, a person who, for some reason, tried to resist as little as possible, aware that any wrong move could further aggravate the situation. The kidnapper believed that there, in that isolated environment, he would be safe. After all, the forest seemed like a perfect place to hide, out of sight of any authorities or onlookers. The surrounding nature, with its tall trees and dense vegetation, created a kind of natural labyrinth, making it difficult for anyone looking for them to escape or locate them. The victim, in turn, tried to remain calm, although his heart accelerated at every step. Every sound, every leaf that moved in the wind seemed like a threat, a reminder of how delicate the situation was. She knew that time was of the essence, and that if she could take advantage of a moment of distraction from the kidnapper, she could. The victim, in turn, tried to remain calm, although his heart accelerated at every step. Every sound, every leaf that moved in the wind seemed like a threat, a reminder of how delicate the situation was. She knew that time was of the essence, and that if she could take advantage of a moment of distraction from the kidnapper, she could try to escape. The strategy was simple, but difficult to execute. Stay alert. Watch for some movement or signal for help, while thinking about the best way to escape from that trap. The forest, which seemed a place of tranquility, actually had its dangers, and the most unexpected of them appeared in an instant that no one could imagine. During the forced walk, the kidnapper turned his back on a fallen log, a natural structure that seemed ordinary in the landscape, but which hid a deadly secret. In this trunk, built years ago by some ancient tree, there was a nest of Californian marimbondos, a species known for its aggressiveness and powerful sting. The forest, which once seemed like a scene of peace, revealed its wildest and most. During the forced walk, the kidnapper turned his back on a fallen log, a natural structure that seemed ordinary in the landscape, but which hid a deadly secret. In this trunk, built years ago by some ancient tree, there was a nest of Californian marimbondos, a species known for its aggressiveness and powerful sting. The forest, which once seemed like a scene of peace, revealed its wildest and most unpredictable face at that moment. As soon as the criminal accidentally hit the trunk, the silence was broken by a sound that sounded like a symphony of chaos. The marimbondos, awakened by the impact, came out of the nest in a flurry of wings and stingers, ruthlessly attacking everything nearby. The scene happened in an instant, almost like a natural tragedy in which the force of the environment outweighs any intention of aggressor. The swarm of insects rushed at the man, who desperately tried to move away, but it was too late. The amount of marimbondos was frightening, and every second they attacked with even more ferocity, leaving visible marks on the criminal's skin. Their attempt to escape was futile, as the scene happened in an instant, almost like a natural tragedy in which the force of the environment outweighs any intention of aggressor. The swarm of insects rushed at the man, who desperately tried to move away, but it was too late. The amount of marimbondos was frightening, and every second they attacked with even more ferocity, leaving visible marks on the criminal's skin. Their attempt to escape was futile, as the insects did not give respite. Meanwhile, the victim, frightened by the noise and the chaotic movement around him, saw an opportunity to escape. With an effort, she ran towards the road that passed nearby, screaming for help, while the marimbondos continued to attack the invader, who struggled and screamed in pain, unable to shake off the fury of nature. The force of nature, which is often seen as something beautiful and peaceful, showed its toughest face that day. The scene that seemed to be peace turned into a real arena of survival. When the rangers and police arrived at the scene, they found the man in a pitiful state, lying on the ground, covered with the force of nature, which is often seen as something beautiful and peaceful, showed its toughest face that day. The scene that seemed to be peace turned into a real arena of survival. When the rangers and police arrived at the scene, they found the man in a pitiful state, lying on the ground covered with injuries and with an expression of pain and defeat. He was rescued, but the scene left a deep mark on the local community, a clear reminder that nature, when provoked or ignored, has its own mechanisms of justice. This story, which circulated throughout the region, became a symbol of how life can react unexpectedly to human attitudes of violence or disrespect. It's a reminder that even in the darkest of situations, the natural world can intervene in a definitive way, leaving a lesson that true strength often lies in the very essence of wildlife. The man with a cold, calculating expression believed that he had everything under control. His steps were steady, almost me. The man with a cold, calculating expression believed that he had everything under control. His steps were steady, almost mechanical, as he pushed his victim down the narrow, winding forest trail. For him, the forest was a fortress, a perfect hiding place away from prying eyes, the hands of the police or any witness who could denounce his action. He believed that there, among the trees and dense vegetation, he could keep his prey unseen without taking risks. But no matter how convinced he was of his strategy, nature had other plans, and the forest, with its own wisdom, began to act in a way that he could never foresee. The victim, terrified, tried to remain calm, even with a racing heart and shortness of breath. Every step she took felt like an eternity as the kidnapper pressed his hand. The victim, terrified, tried to remain calm, even with a racing heart and shortness of breath. Every step she took felt like an eternity as the kidnapper pressed his hand against her arm, pulling her. The idea that thick vegetation and tall trees could protect their action was an illusion. The forest, in its essence, is a living universe, which reacts with an intelligence of its own. From the instant he pushed the victim into the fallen trunk, a seemingly simple event, a chain of events began to unfold. The marimbondos, who were quiet and hiding in their nest waiting for the right moment, noticed the impact on the trunk and decided to act. Without warning, a barrage of wings and stingers burst out of hiding, invading the space wildly and mercilessly. The attack was immediate, almost like a defense force that the forest exercised against an invader who disrespected its balance. The man, who until then believed he was in control, was taken by surprise by what seemed like a force of nature itself. The marimbondos, with their aggressiveness and determination, attacked without distinction, injuring their exposed skin and causing intense pain. His cries of pain mingled with the sound of wings flapping frantically as he desperately tried to get away from the swarm. But the amount of insects was too great, and his body could not withstand the continuous attack. Each sting seemed like a punishment that the forest applied fairly, a kind of natural justice that does not tolerate the invasion of its habitat with violence. Meanwhile, the victim, with his face marked by fear and courage, took advantage of the moment of confusion to flee. In tears, he ran towards the nearest road, calling for help from passing motorists, desperately trying to signal that he needed help. The scene of the criminal, fighting off a swarm of marimbondos, was left behind as she sought safety. The forest, which once seemed like a protection, now turned out to be a trap, proof that wildlife, when provoked or threatened, reacts with a force that cannot be controlled. What happened there was a clear demonstration that the justice of nature knows no boundaries, no limits, and that it always finds a way to restore its balance, even in the most difficult situations. The episode, striking and shocking, left a deep mark on the memory of those who witnessed or heard about it. The idea that the forest can turn into an unexpected ally at the right time, defending its territory with surprising ferocity, is something that reverberates in everyone's understanding of the impact that the natural environment has on our human actions. And as police and rangers arrived on the scene, a hidden truth emerged. The strength of wildlife is something that goes unmeasured, unchecked, and often decides to act unexpectedly, leaving a lesson that the balance of the natural world is delicate but extremely powerful. Now I want to go even deeper into this subject, exploring how this force of nature influences our perception of control and how our decisions can trigger reactions we don't imagine, revealing a true transformation in how we understand the impact of our actions on the world around us. In the middle of the trail, while trying to force the victim to move on, the kidnapper took a false step. His eyes, fixed on the mission of maintaining control, did not realize what was coming next. His feet inadvertently stepped on a fallen trunk, a natural structure that seemed harmless, but which concealed a mortal danger. The impact was enough to make the wood crack, and it was at that moment that everything changed radically. From within the trunk, a cloud of rising hum began to form, like a silent threat suddenly approaching, charged with a fury that no one could have predicted. That sound, initially discreet, soon turned into a frightening symphony of wings flapping and sharp irons moving in unison, in search of defense. It was the moment when the true force of nature revealed itself, wildly and relentlessly. The Californian marimbondos, known for ferocious attack when threatened, had been roused by the impact and sudden movement. Now, they came out of hiding with an intensity that seemed to be fueled by an ancient rage, an instinctive protective response to their habitat. The number of insects was frightening, a real mass of wings and stingers that spread rapidly through the air like a threatening cloud. The buzzing sound increased every second, growing until it filled the entire scene with a sense of chaos and despair. The criminal, who until then had been trying to maintain control, was taken by surprise by this reaction. His first reaction was to try to move away, but his speed was not enough to escape from that furious swarm. The marimbondos attacked without distinction, wounding his exposed skin with a force that seemed intentional, as if the forest itself was punishing the invasion with a natural punishment. The impact of the stingers was painful, and instant pain mixed with panic, as he tried to extricate himself from that absurd situation. His cries of pain echoed in the forest, mingling with the incessant sound of the wings that surrounded him, in a battle of life and death that seemed to have no end. While all this was happening, the victim, who until then had tried to maintain hope, saw in the confusion a possibility of escape. Taking advantage of the moment of distraction of the offender, she detached herself with might and main, desperately running towards the nearest road. His mind was focused on only one thing: escape from that nightmare, ask for help, and save his life. Adrenaline pumped with every step as he looked back at the scene of destruction the forest had created for the invader. The man, in turn, continued to struggle, completely overwhelmed by the onslaught of the insects, his skin scarred by stingers, his body covered with bleeding wounds. The force of nature, which is often seen as something beautiful, revealed its most brutal side in that instant. The forest, which seemed like a silent ally, turned into a death trap for those who dared to challenge its balance. The marimbondos, as a force of natural justice, did what was necessary to protect their space. Each sting was a punishment that seemed to be written in the very essence of the environment. That episode made it clear that when provoked, nature responds quickly and definitively, often in a way that no human could have imagined. The impact of our decisions, however small they may seem, can trigger unpredictable reactions, showing that the real power lies in wildlife itself, in its ability to defend its kingdom with an intensity that defies any human logic. In a matter of seconds, all the serenity of the forest turned into a scene of absolute chaos. The air, which minutes before had seemed charged with silence and expectation, was quickly invaded by a mass of wings and stingers. Like a dark cloud, the swarm of marimbondos advanced with frightening speed, as if it were a force of nature itself awakened for a purpose of justice. Their bodies protruded towards the invader, who until then had tried to resist, but now found himself completely overwhelmed by a force he could not control. Each insect, moved by an instinct of defense, attacked mercilessly, wounding him mercilessly, as if each sting was a definite sentence. The scene unfolded at a fast pace, almost like a choreography of pure, natural violence. The man, who until then had the illusion of being in control, dropped the gun on the ground, a reflection of pure despair. His arms moved frantically in an attempt to protect himself, but the marimbondos were too many, their aggressiveness boundless. His skin was quickly covered by a sea of stingers, which hammered at his flesh with absurd intensity. Each bite felt like a stab, a punishment that the forest itself applied with a force that no one could deny. His screams of pain echoed throughout the area as his body writhed, trying to escape that attack that seemed to have no end. It was as if the very essence of the forest was reacting against the invasion, a manifestation of a natural justice that does not forgive those who invade its space. The speed of the attack left the criminal completely stunned. His movements became incoherent, desperate as he tried to move away, but his efforts were futile in the face of the barrage of angry insects. Each new stinger increased his agony, leaving visible marks on his skin and increasing his sense of powerlessness. His wide eyes sought a way out, a hope that seemed more and more distant. The pain was so much that for a moment his vision blurred, and he felt as if he were being consumed by a greater force, a force that manifested itself in the form of a natural revenge, a response from the environment that he had disrespected. It was a scene of destruction, of a punishment that seemed to be written into wildlife lore itself, a lesson that the impact of a wrong decision can trigger devastating consequences. As he struggled, trying to get rid of the stingers, his struggle turned into a battle for survival, a fight for life itself. His arms moved awkwardly, trying to ward off the insects that surrounded him on all sides, but the amount of marimbondos seemed endless. Each new attack reinforced the idea that the force of nature, when provoked, responds with an intensity that no one can predict. Their cries of pain were drowned out by the incessant drone of wings, a symphony of destruction that seemed to echo throughout the forest. At this moment, it became clear that the invader had no way to escape from that relentless attack, that the forest itself, with its ancient wisdom, had decided to quickly and definitively bring justice. That instant revealed a hidden truth. Wildlife, when protected and respected, is a force that does not let itself be dominated, and that reacts with a ferocity that puts any human being to the test of his own arrogance before the natural balance. While the battle against the swarm of marimbondos still reverberated in the forest, the victim, who until then had remained frozen by fear and surprise, realized an opportunity that seemed to arise out of chaos. His eyes, which had once been wide with dread, began to look for a way out, a hope of escaping from that nightmare. With a trembling body, she saw a chance to use the very turmoil of the moment to her advantage. When the criminal struggled desperately, trying to get rid of the stingers and screaming in pain, she took advantage of the confusion to free herself from his control. His steps, which had previously been slow and hesitant, became quick and purposeful, driven by the instinct of survival. Without looking back, she started running towards the nearest road, her heart pounding in her chest as adrenaline propelled her every move. That seemingly simple action, running towards danger, turned out to be a genius strategy in the face of a situation of extreme risk. There, in that moment of disarray, she turned vulnerability into an opportunity to put herself in a position of advantage. His mind raced, knowing that when he reached the road he could call for help and turn the scene of despair into a possible rescue. Each step was a victory against fear, an affirmation that even in the face of such an overwhelming threat, courage could prevail. When she finally spotted the first cars passing by, she raised her hands desperately, signaling that she needed help. Her cries for help echoed down the road, seeking to capture the attention of anyone nearby. At that moment, a sense of hope began to emerge. Even with the intense pain still throbbing in his body and the memory of the attack of the marimbondos still very present in his memory, his decision to flee was a role reversal, a transformation in the narrative of that episode that seemed doomed to the most tragic outcome. The woman, who in her condition as a victim seemed to be at the mercy of a dead-end situation, took control and turned the key to the story, using her own courage as a weapon. The impact of that attitude was greater than she herself could have imagined. The drivers, surprised by the cry for help, quickly stopped, providing assistance and calling the authorities. Thus, what seemed like a hopeless kidnapping turned into a journey of rescue, an unexpected victory that came from the act of acting, of not accepting despair as final. Meanwhile, the scene in the forest remained marked by the confrontation of forces. The man, now wounded and exhausted, struggled to get up while the insects still stung him mercilessly, a punishment that seemed to continue even after his momentary defeat. The victim, in turn, was sure that her decision to flee was what really changed everything. His courage in that instant revealed a hidden truth, that inner strength, often forgotten, is capable of transforming vulnerability into a powerful weapon of resistance. By hitting the road, she not only sought help, but also took a step toward a new mindset, a journey that showed in practice how quick decisions and the courage to act can change the course of seemingly doomed stories. Now, as you think about your own journey, it's important to understand that moments of crisis often bring opportunities for transformation. Situations that seem hopeless can be reversed by simple but strategic actions that reveal the true impact of our mindset in the face of adversity. This experience has brought to light an essential truth. Within each of us, there is a force capable of transforming fear into courage, despair into hope, and vulnerability into a powerful weapon of resistance. Just like that woman, we can learn to recognize these hidden opportunities, even in the most difficult situations, and use them to create a new narrative of overcoming and resilience. It is in the hour of chaos that we discover who we really are and what our greatest strength is, the decision not to give up, even when everything seems to fall apart. And as we reflect on this episode, the provocation remains that often, the impact we seek to change our destiny lies in the courage to take the next step, in the confidence that what seems like a defeat can actually be the beginning of a profound transformation. Witnesses who were close to that moment of chaos had a vision that, to this day, seems hard to believe. Motorists passing along the stretch of road, hearing the desperate screams escaping from the forest interior, decided to stop to understand what was happening. When they got closer, they saw a scene that looked like something out of a thriller. A man covered in wounds and with skin marked by stingers writhed in pain as he tried to get up, but it was evident that his strength had already been exhausted. Beside him, a woman exhausted and crying sought refuge on the road, while the continuous sound of wings flapping and the screams of agony of the kidnapper still echoed in the memory of everyone there. To those who witnessed that scene, it seemed somewhat surreal, almost like a representation of a justice that nature itself had done. Many reported that in their perception, the man who once seemed so imposing now begged for help, a drastic change that seemed almost like a divine punishment, a kind of punishment that came unpredictably but absolutely legitimate in the logic of that moment. Some drivers commented that the instant they arrived, the expression of despair on the criminal's face was difficult to describe. His eyes, which once had the sparkle of those who believed they were in control, were now wide, filled with fear, as his body trembled and his screams mingled with the incessant buzzing of the marimbondo's wings. The scene had a strong symbolic force, as if the forest itself was claiming its space, doing it justice in a way that no one could have foreseen. A woman who until then had been the victim of a violent act now had the role of witness to a kind of natural punishment, a lesson that seemed to be being written by forces far greater than any human being could imagine. The drivers, visibly shocked, reported that at that moment, the feeling of helplessness was mixed with that of a kind of silent admiration for the force of nature. For them, it was a clear demonstration that the impact of our actions, however small they may seem, can trigger reactions that go far beyond human control. Some even commented that, upon observing the scene, they realized how the vulnerability of that man had been exposed in a brutal way. He, who was trying to stay on his feet, now looked like a shadow of what he had been minutes before. Their cries for help were drowned out by the sound of their wings, and their struggle for survival seemed a metaphor for human frailty in the face of a universe that often shows us its hidden truth, the one that reveals that the impact of a decision or an attitude disrespectful to the natural environment can generate devastating consequences. For many, it was a lesson in humility, in recognizing that the force of nature is not something to be underestimated, and that, at the right time, it responds in a way that leaves no doubt. The justice of the world is not only done by human laws, but also by forces that exist beyond rational understanding, often surprising those who think they are in control of everything. The presence of those drivers who witnessed everything brought a dimension of veracity to that narrative. They reported that even after the arrival of the authorities and the rescue of the criminal, the image of that man, fallen and suffering, was marked in everyone's memory. For them, it was a profound reflection on our relationship with the environment and how our actions can trigger reactions that seem beyond our reach. The scene left a lesson that true strength often lies not in power or violence, but in the ability to respect and recognize the limits of the natural world around us. And this story, which until then seemed a mere narrative of crime and punishment, reveals something much greater, the essence of a hidden truth that we must all learn to understand if we are to live in harmony with the life that pulsates on Earth itself. Minutes after the show of force that the forest decided to display, the scene changed quickly and decisively. From the eerie silence, the sound of heavy footsteps approached, accompanied by the creaking of boots and the muffled sound of voices seeking to understand what had happened there. Rangers and police officers arrived at the scene, attracted by the alarm of the drivers who, frightened, had stopped to help or at least to watch that moment that more seemed a brutal lesson of natural justice. When the authorities finally arrived, they found the man lying on the ground, his body covered with wounds, covered with gashes, his clothes torn and his skin marked by visible red marks and bumps. He seemed a shadow of someone who, a short time before, had considered himself invincible, but who now saw himself completely defeated. the victim of a force he could not control or foresee. The victim by his side was safe, with the traces of fear still visible on his face, but now with an expression of relief and renewed hope. She was quickly joined by rescuers who checked her vital signs and provided first care. The scene, which looked like an episode from a fairy tale, actually had the tone of a harsh lesson, a lesson that nature itself gave without mercy. The story of that man, who tried to manipulate the environment to his advantage, ended up in the local pages as an example of how life reacts to human actions when they disrespect the limits of the natural world. The repercussion did not take long to reach street conversations, local radio, and social networks. The episode became a symbol of a hidden truth. The force of nature, which is often underestimated or ignored, always finds a way to restore its balance. The narrative gained strength for its emotional impact, for showing that even in the Moderna, the natural world maintains its own mechanisms of justice, which do not depend on human laws, but on an ancestral wisdom that regulates life and death in a ruthless way. It was a clear demonstration that our actions, no matter how minor, can trigger reactions that exceed any expectation. And that often, the best decision is simply to respect these boundaries, to understand that the impact of a disrespectful attitude can be devastating, and that in the journey of transformation that we all face, learning to listen to this silent voice of the environment around us is fundamental to avoid being caught off guard by its responses. The story spread like a revelation, deeply touching anyone who heard or saw it all happen. It has become a kind of metaphor for many about the power of decision, about the importance of recognizing our limits and of acting more consciously. After all, life always has its backstage, its revelations hidden in the simplicity of an episode that, in fact, is a profound lesson in balance and respect. And when reflecting on all this, it becomes clear that the impact of our decisions is not only in the visible consequences, but also in the way they reverberate in the essence of the universe. The experience there in the forest left an indelible mark, that the force of nature responds definitively, and that the true impact of our attitudes will only be understood when we are willing to accept that we are part of a greater whole, where each action provokes a proportional reaction, often surprising and always revealing. Now I want to go even deeper into this subject, because this story reveals one of the greatest truths that we often prefer to ignore. Our actions, however minor they may seem, carry an impact that goes beyond what we can immediately see. The strength of nature, as we have seen in the narrative, is not something that manifests itself only in the beauty of landscapes or the tranquility of natural environments, but also in its ability to respond ruthlessly to any disrespect. This response is often a silent lesson in what we call natural justice. It is not for nothing that throughout history, many cultures and philosophies have highlighted the importance of acting with awareness and respect towards the world around us. Because, in essence, everything we plant somehow comes back to us, whether in the form of good experiences or painful consequences that make us rethink our attitudes. In the case of the forest, the reaction of the marimbondos shows that the impact of human behavior on the environment is something that we cannot fully control. When someone invades a space, disrespects its internal laws, or tries to manipulate its balance, the response can come in a way that we do not even imagine. That is the great revelation that remains of everything that happened there. Nature is not a passive entity. It acts, it reacts, and often more intelligently and ruthlessly than any human force. This is a lesson that holds true for all of us, especially in the Moderna, in which the idea of absolute control seems to be increasingly distant. The impact of our decisions, of what we do with the environment, of how we treat other people, all contribute to a chain of events that can surprise us in ways we can't even predict. It is a kind of mirror game, where what we sow comes back to us proportionally, often more quickly and directly than we imagine. This understanding is fundamental for those who seek a true transformation in their mentality. When we come to understand that our actions have a natural consequence, we begin to think twice before acting impulsively or disrespecting boundaries that, in fact, are not only physical but also moral and spiritual. This is a journey of self-knowledge that requires courage to face our own shadows, our tendencies to act on impulse or out of selfishness. When we learn to see life through this prism, everything is transformed. Decisions gain greater weight, and responsibility for them becomes clearer. In the process, The hidden truth that we are all connected by an invisible network of actions and reactions begins to make more sense. From there, we begin to value prudence, empathy, and respect more, because we know that the impact of each act is not only in our history, but reverberates throughout the universe that surrounds us. And, if we think about it, this perception puts us in front of a great opportunity for change, because it is not just about avoiding punishment, but about creating a new mentality, a new way of relating to the world. When we start to act more consciously, we begin to see the small actions of everyday life as a reflection of who we really are. Each decision carries a weight of transformation, an opportunity to contribute to a more balanced, fairer, and more harmonious environment. That's the real lesson. Understand that responsibility for our actions is something we can never delegate to chance or luck. It is necessary to assume, in fact, control of our journey, knowing that the consequences often come in the form of revelations that invite us to rethink everything we believe to be right or wrong. So, everything that we live in the forest, with the attack of the marimbondos and the reaction of the natural environment, serves as a mirror to reflect on our own attitudes, because deep down, each of us is an agent of this chain of impact, and our transformation begins exactly there, in the awareness that our actions, no matter how simple they may seem, can trigger a series of reactions that change everything around us. It is an opportunity to realize that by acting with respect, empathy, and responsibility, we can build a reality more aligned with the true essence of life, and thus create a journey where the impact of our decisions is a source of evolution, learning, and connection with what really matters. After all, life is a great web, and each of us has the power to weave a more conscious story, where the truest justice is the one that is born from one's own heart. Comment there, "This makes sense to me," or write a word that represents your reflection. If you've made it this far, it's because you've really connected with this story and the message it carries. These experiences remind us that the force of nature is a powerful ally, and that often it teaches us lessons that go far beyond what we can imagine. This reflection helps us see our actions more carefully and understand that the impact we make on the world around us may be greater than we think. So if this content made sense to you, here is my invitation to subscribe to the channel. Thus you stay inside stories that, in addition to engaging, also bring valuable learning about life, the environment, and our responsibility to act more consciously. If you enjoyed reflecting on all this, leave a comment below saying that I'm with you until the end, or share what went through your head when you heard this story. It is always good to know that these messages are reaching those who are really interested in this type of content. Oh, and if this story made you think of something new, keep an eye out, because there is a video here on the side that complements this subject well. Click there and continue with me there, because there is always something you can add even more to your learning journey. Thank you for being here until the end, and I hope to see you in the next content.